Welcome back. Following on from our recent video on vintage cigars and collecting and aging them, a few questions came up which were curious about whether the packaging, the way the cigars are put together and stored, has an impact on the aging potential of those very same cigars. Short answer is yes. It's taken several decades to fully appreciate how it can affect the difference, how it can affect the flavor of the cigar, and the difference at which and the rate at which the cigars can age. I'll give you a few examples of what I mean. Many cigars will go into what's called a dress box. So this will be a hinged lid like this, often containing 10 cigars, sometimes 25 cigars, and that format is giving arguably the minimal natural interaction of the cigars with each other. There's 2 layers normally, or 1 layer, and the cigars will be touching each other just on their edges. Why is that significant to how they will age over time? Well, microfermentation, which takes place in the cigars after they've been rolled and fermented and then boxed, is a process that does require some tobacco-on-tobacco contact. More of that there is, the more of that microfermentation can take place. So, if you're in a hurry and you want to age cigars, keeping them in a flat box like this is not quite the fastest way to do it. I would never advise rushing the aging of a cigar, but you should be aware that a box like this is going to be an average period of aging, the rate at which it ages, putting aside, of course, all the other variables we've talked about before, humidity, temperature, and the like. The other common packaging you will get is a slide lid box, an SLB, something like this. It's called an SLB for the very simple reason that the lid slides off. They're sometimes referred to as, help if I opened it. They're sometimes referred to as cabinet selection. Now, many people who smoke cigars, don't necessarily collect them for too long, love SLBs. Why is that? Well, there's a simple reason. A box of 25 cigars like this they will age faster and more significantly than a dress box, because the bunch of cigars held together is optimizing or maximizing the contact between the tobacco and across the cigars. So they will develop and be ready to smoke a little bit faster, but conversely, they might reach the end of their aging potential sooner than a dress box. The natural end to that is, of course, going with a larger cabinet. And my father, myself, many customers who really value putting a little bit of age on their own cigars before smoking them, the 50 cab is king. Look at that. Big, significant size. The name is pretty obvious what it is. 50 count cigar box, so 50 cigars in a bundle, in a cabinet. And that just takes my earlier point about the rate at which the microfermentation can continue in the cigars to its natural and most logical end. I'm going to show you this just because they're beautiful. Bolivar Corona Gigantes. This box is from 1999. I would argue it's probably done most of its significant aging. But when you have the advantage of admiring one of these, don't be shy to take them out and just appreciate that aroma. That is all the goodness we need in our lives. That's it as far as I'm concerned. Everything a cigar smoker wants to smell when they pull out some cigars they may be thinking about having a smoke with. These age beautifully. But my same point as the 25 count, be aware that additional contact of tobacco on tobacco at a 50 count will slow things down, perhaps not enough. You want to keep this for a long time, bring the temperature down, reduce the humidity a little bit, but be aware these are going to be ready to smoke sooner than everything else. Now we're going to get into a slightly more esoteric series of findings. These particular observations, perhaps, I don't think are novel or unique to myself or my father, but it's always interesting to learn it yourself, to experience it yourself. One of them is, well, looks like there's a box of cigars here, but this is actually Bolivar Churchills in tubes. And these ones are from 1996. Now, why am I showing this to you? In a tube, many people used to think the ugly ducklings were put in here because they could be hidden in a tube. It's not true. Oh, what is a tube giving you if you're interested in aging or vintage cigars? A tube is a time capsule. It isolates the cigar. It does the opposite of what the 50 cab and the 25 count cabinets are doing. It's minimizing the contact of tobacco on tobacco for the ongoing microfermentation. The tube is further isolating the tobacco from oxygen and the other environmental conditions that can promote faster aging of the cigar. So you have to be very patient with tube cigars. And if you are, you will be rewarded with cigars that will live long past their normal aging potential. This cigar will smoke much younger than its box age deems it should. And if you compared it to a 1996 Bolivar Corona Gigantes, not in tubes, in regular boxes, I promise you the flavor profile is very different. In fact, that 50 cab I showed you and this cigar are only separated by 3 years. They're both Bolivar, they're both Churchills, but I promise you this will smoke with much more personality and a little bit more oomph than the 50 cab. So this is one to bear in mind. If you're ever lucky enough to come across a collection of cigars that someone's disposing of, they want to sell, and they have tubes inside, look at the tubes. Don't think they're the ugly ducklings. They're often very well worth the purchase. I would in fact prioritize tube cigars ahead of untubed cigars in very aged collections because they will have more to say. The last one I'm going to pull out here is a bit of gratuitous cigar porn, but it also does talk to something. Those of you who don't really know the story of Cohiba, you might recognize, you may not recognize this very old band. This is from 1990. It's Cohiba Lancero 50 count dress box. Incredibly rare packaging, a beautiful box with the very old Cohiba bands on them. But why have I pulled this one out in particular? Well, this is the last bit where packaging comes in. We are extremely lucky to have this in our collection because these are cellophane wrapped Cohiba Lancero from 1990. Why am I so excited to say that? Because the cellophane is, like the tube, a time capsule. Although these cigars are now getting on to 33 years old from box date, I promise you they will smoke like a 15-year-old cigar perhaps. The cellophane does some extraordinary work on very aged cigars. It gives them a life way beyond what should be possible. And if you're lucky enough to come across or to have cellophane wrapped Cuban cigars in your collection, treasure them. It's about as good as it gets with the high-aged vintage cigars. That's it. I hope that was some help. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask in comments or come and see me in the shop. Thank you very much.